the floor where they drop like bombs. Faceless voices running all the cons. Digital whispers in a binary night. No light, no face, pure sound, no sight. Stories unfold in the dark unscrolled. Echoes of silence, secrets untold. Waves crash loud in this audio cave. No mic, no fame, just the sound we crave. Tune and turn up, let the silence break. Raw, unfiltered, hear the earthquake. No mic needed, just a vibe that's real. Faceless words you can touch and feel. In shadows, voices untamed. No need for spotlight, no claim to fame. Just a beat of life in a stream of thought. Every word a punchline, no need to be taught. Just listen close, no visuals needed. Raw conversation, unprocessed, unseated. Feel the pulse in every sentence said. No distractions, just thoughts in your head. Whispers of the streets, rumbling through. Faceless yet vivid, a world in view. No mic, just souls, connecting in flow. Pure and raw, let the rhythm go.
Thank you, sir. I am here to talk about my philosophy, cogito, ergo sum. Well, I first thought the most logical way to find if I exist is to doubt any information I have in my head that comes from my senses. But instead of finding my existence invalid, I simply proved its existence, hence cogito, ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. A better way to learn my method of doubt is not to deny my existence. It simply does not work, but rather to doubt any fact anyone provides to me, and to only accept one proven to me with absolute certainty. That way I could learn. Instead of going through hundreds of books and years of research, I could figure out how to prove the things I wanted to learn myself, and find the answers I wanted with certainty. Because of the uncertainty and the fact that the views of Aristotle were simply theories of how the world works, there was no proof. Not to mention, the theories could be wrong. The only way to get to a certain answer is to have one. And the only way to get a certain answer of how the world works is to apply my method of doubt, only this time on the laws of the universe, the laws of physics. Yes, I believed that planetary motion was caused by vortexes of ether, which is the medium for which light travels through, and that the planets themselves were made of ether, which I believed was the fifth element. In short, I thought that the planets were vortexes of ether, which the ether surrounding them made them rotate. I was simply wrong about this. My mistake was not doubting the claims of the church and the ancient philosophers, and taking them for granted, as well as taking the universe for granted, without doubting it as well. I thought too high of my knowledge and ignored my faults, and simply came to the wrong conclusion. I discovered the law of refraction through experimentation. I used a thin piece of glass and observed how light was slowed while passing through it, which made the light appear to make at an angle. After which I developed a mathematical formula to predict how much it would refract at different angles. It was the first step for me to understand the true nature of light and physics as a whole. Algebra was and is the best language for mathematical calculations. The problem is it's limited and could only do simple computations. Geometry, on the other hand, was more limited geometrically than algebra linguistically. So I thought, what better way to unite them than to make them the same language? So I created my own equations in what we now know as Cartesian geometry, which is basically just a way to define the position of a point on a graph with two numbers. Applied mathematics to explain physical phenomena by finding out that all objects can be represented. For example, all objects' position can be described in coordinates. I then used mathematical functions to define how different types of matter interact, such as the force of two masses on each other, or how they get displaced by other forces. I examined the body and learned of its anatomy in detail, after which I used many of the scientific theories of the time to see how the different parts of the body worked, and I began by understanding the respiratory system and how the body uses oxygen and carbon dioxide, etc. It was a long process, and the reason I knew so much about the body compared the average man was simply because the scientific revolution was going on during my time, and scientists had begun to understand different aspects of the body, like the cardiovascular system. I was raised in a society that valued rationalism highly and had very little experience with religion, so naturally I viewed everything through a mechanistic lens. I would even make a case that viewing the human body and the universe as a whole through a mechanistic lens is superior, as it allowed me to make predictions and draw conclusions based on evidence alone. I saw the rainbow firsthand and observed that it was simply caused by light being refracted through a drop of water. I then calculated how much light refracts at different angles. And from those calculations, I realized that what creates a rainbow is all of the different colors being refracted in a different manner and combining to form a rainbow. And the 7 colors I formulated my concept of inertia, which is an object in motion stays in motion unless an external force acts upon it, by simply observing objects in motion and noticing that they don't change their velocity without something interacting with it. I defined inertia as the property of matter to resist change in motion when acted upon by a force. While studying anatomy, I was able to observe that the brain, and specifically the parts of the brain that deal with memory, thought, and consciousness, were all connected to and were affected by actions of the body. This led me to believe that the connection between mind and body was much more complex than simply the brain commanding the body, and that they influence each other. I rely on skepticism because it is the best way to validate scientific knowledge, as it allows me to avoid accepting unproven claims as fact. just because of who they have been made by, or because they sound plausible. Scientific knowledge is built upon what is proven to work and what has evidence, not what sounds plausible based on theories or past observations. I studied meteorology as a way to understand the nature and the cause of natural disasters like storms, earthquakes, floods, and wildfires. All things which at the time were simply left to the divine, and were viewed as simply signs of God's rage. I used the scientific method to analyze and understand natural disasters as not a product of God's wrath, but as a natural process that follows laws and patterns, and can be studied and predicted, rather than feared. I emphasize deductive reasoning in my approach to science because it allows me to establish a foundation of axioms and work from there. This eliminates any ambiguity as to which axioms are true or not, because if I am wrong from my assumptions, then my work will fail on its own. Unlike the traditional inductive method, which can often make mistakes due to small assumptions or biases. I arrived at the idea that matter is defined by extension after noticing that the only characteristics that matter seems to share in common is that they all have an extension in space. Thus, everything can be defined by extension. I made this idea central to my theories because by defining all matter and objects in terms of extension, I could calculate the force between multiple objects or their size, shape, etc. My exchange with scientists like Mersenne greatly influenced my scientific ideas. I was not only to exchange ideas of a scientific and mathematical nature, but also to have a more diverse set of opinions on my ideas. The opinions of Mersenne helped me make sure that my ideas were sound and based on strong assumptions, as they were not blindly accepted by a group of yes men. I believe my mechanistic philosophy is the best way to understand the universe, because it is the most rational and consistent approach to understanding the universe. It is based on the scientific method, which allows me to analyze nature and the universe in an objective and systematic way. And it has been proven to be successful, not only in my time, but to this day. The modern physics we have is based on this philosophy. Meditations on first philosophy, I crafted language to convey complex ideas by carefully choosing my words and keeping my sentences concise and clear. I also used examples and analogies to help clarify difficult concepts, as well as breaking down complicated ideas into smaller, more easily understood parts. I aimed to make my writing as accessible as possible to the general reader, while still conveying my complex thoughts and ideas about philosophy and the human condition. I believe that innate ideas, like the idea of God, morality, the soul, etc., do influence how humans develop language because language serves the purpose of sharing ideas. So it only makes sense that the fundamental ideas that are wired into our brains from birth should influence how language is structured. I think that it is part of the reason why there are similar features in different languages all around the world. I would respond that the idea of universal grammar, that is that all human languages share certain syntactic properties, is an idea developed over time, and it is definitely correct and connects my ideas to later thinkers, as I believe that all human languages have the same purpose, which is to communicate. It was not an idea I developed, but I think it is consistent with all of my previous theories on language and humanity. I was involved in debates about language and universal grammar during my time, the most important one being with a group of scholars and philosophers known as the Port Royal Grammarians. They believed that language was primarily a social construct and that grammar was not innate, but rather learned through experience and social interaction. I, on the other hand, believed that the underlying structure of language was innate and could be analyzed through reason and introspection. In terms of my most semantic experiment, I would say it was the experiment in mediations, in which I proved the existence of my own mind by doubting my senses and all information that came from my senses. The reason this was so semantic is that it was the first major experiment in philosophy that used the method of doubt, and because of the conclusions I came to and implications that were far ahead of their time, I would say that this experiment was the most semantic one that I conducted. My concept of dualism is the idea that the mind and the body are two separate entities that interact with each other. I separate the mind from the body because the mind, specifically the human consciousness, does not require a physical form to exist or to think. While the body is a physical entity that can be observed and measured, the mind is not. While I do believe that the mind relies on the brain as a medium, the mind is not limited to the bounds of a physical form. The key principles in my rules for the direction of the mind for logical thinking are as follows. 1. Accept only what is certain and evident to the mind. 2. Divide each problem into as many parts as possible and necessary to solve them best. 3. Always make your deductions in order from the simplest and easiest to know to the most complex. 4. Review all your thoughts to ensure their validity. I define substance as the fundamental material or matter that makes up all things in the universe. I believe that there are two types of substance: physical substances like matter and mathematical substances such as numbers. Substance is critical to my philosophy and science. Because it is the fundamental building block of the world, all matter can be broken down into its own substances, and every interaction between different substances can be thought about by mathematical formulas. When it comes to solving mathematical problems, I use what is now known as the Cartesian coordinate system, which is a graphical representation of mathematics with values x and y representing a point in a Cartesian plane or grid, and the formulas that make up this point. This approach allows me to visualize problems, as well as to understand the relationship between different pieces of information. And, because of this, I can apply analytical geometry and algebraic notation to find a solution to various problems, like predicting the position of different objects, and calculate their movement, etc. The pragmatic brevity of these models is that they are concise, precise, and efficient. It allows mathematicians, scientists, and engineers to use just a few symbols to represent a complicated formula and understand its meaning. It allows them to communicate complex mathematical ideas quickly and effectively, which greatly enhances productivity. It is indeed a paradox. The universe is like a clockwork, and I believe that everything is predetermined by previous causes. There is no room for free will in such a universe. It would break the laws of cause and effect. However, it seems that humans possess free will, an ability to think and make decisions that seems to break the laws of the universe. While the universe is deterministic, we also do possess a kind of freedom to make our own decisions. Through my work on equations, I made several significant breakthroughs in the field of mathematics. I am credited with the development of analytic geometry, which combines geometry and algebra to solve geometrical problems by reducing the problems to their algebraic form. I also developed the Cartesian coordinate system, an essential part of analytic geometry. I was also one of the first mathematicians to introduce the concept of differentiation and integral calculus. I distrust sensory perception because the senses can be deceiving. They can be fooled by illusions, false sensory input, etc., which can lead to incorrect conclusions. I shape my scientific method around this fact. I seek to find the true laws of the universe in a way that eliminates or minimizes the impact of possible errors caused by the senses. I hope that my philosophy of reason will continue to influence future thinkers by encouraging them to use reason, skepticism, and the scientific method to study the world around them, and not simply just to accept information at face value or simply because a lot of people believe something. By emphasizing doubt, questioning, experimentation, and reason, I hope that my philosophy will inspire future thinkers to ask the right questions, challenge assumptions, and arrive at robust and rational conclusions. My ideas, particularly my theory of mind-body dualism, could potentially play ecology. The dualism theory suggests that the mind and body are separate entities and that mental processes are not reducible to brain chemistry or physiology. It could inspire future psychologists to explore the complex relationship between the mind and the body and the potential for psychological phenomena to independently exist. I responded to critics like Gassendi and Hobbes by engaging in written debates with them. We exchanged letters, critiquing each other's positions on different subjects. I defended my ideas by arguing that my methodology was sound, and that my conclusions were backed up by sufficient evidence. I acknowledged the valid points made by my critics, and sought to clarify any misunderstandings or to refine my arguments to account for newly raised objections. I am unfamiliar with loudness theory. Are you referring to the physics of sound as in loudness, amplitude, frequency? If so, I've not really contributed to the field of sound physics. However, I do believe I had some contributions to the field of optics. By calculating an approximate refracting angle for light passing through different mediums such as thin glass or drops of water. I made some observations through some preliminary experimentation. I found that the speed of sound changes with the temperature and pressure of the medium it was passing through. And I also noticed that sound could be used to determine the distance to a nearby object by using the time it took for the sound to bounce back from an object and hit a listener. I am not an expert in acoustics, and my observations were just the start to what later on would be fully developed into its own science through the work of scientists in the 18th and 19th centuries. My hope is that my work, particularly my scientific and philosophical work, will continue to be studied and built upon by future generations of thinkers and scientists. I intend to leave a legacy of rigorous scientific thought, skepticism, reason, and the importance of questioning assumptions. I also hope that my contributions to language and communication will inspire future thinkers to carefully choose their words to clearly and effectively communicate complex ideas. I think you prepared a well set of questions. You covered all the areas of my work, both scientific and philosophical, and asked some quite in-depth questions. I don't think there is anything missing. Good job.
Mics on the floor where they drop like bombs. Faceless voices running all the cons. Digital whispers in a binary night. No light, no face, pure sound, no sight. Stories unfold in the dark unscrolled. Echoes of silence, secrets untold. Waves crash loud in this audio cave. No light, no fame, just the sound we crave. Tune in, turn up, let the silence break. Raw, unfiltered, hear the earthquake. No mic needed, just the vibe that's real. Faceless words you can touch and feel. Hidden in shadows, voices untamed. No need for spotlight, no claim to fame. Just a beat of life in a stream of thought. Every word a punchline, no need to be taught. Just listen close, no visuals needed. Raw conversation, unprocessed, unseated. Feel the pulse in every sentence said. No distractions, just thoughts in your head. Whispers of the streets, rumbling through. Faceless yet vivid, a world in view. No mic, just souls, connecting in flow. Pure and raw, let the rhythm go. Pure and raw. Pure and raw. Silence break, raw, unfiltered, hear the earthquake. No mic needed, just the vibe that's real. Faceless words you can touch and feel. Tune in, turn up, let the silence break. Raw, unfiltered, hear the earthquake. No mic needed, just the vibe that's real. Faceless words you can touch and feel. Pure and raw. Okay.